Good morning, everybody. I got my whole gang here. I'll name them all when they settle down. We got Mila coming in. She's going to do some wrecking ball stuff. I'm John, director of Rescued Rollers. I've got Noelle behind the camera working comments, and she's mic'd up today, so you'll be able to hear her read the comments. I won't have to repeat them. Today is March 14th, and casual coffee with the crew. We got a few updates on some changes to Ohio law, but in the meantime, let's give everybody a few minutes to get settled. My Roxanne. Beautiful journey. We have Wyatt. Next to me, Fen. I don't know if you can see her, and we've got Hawkeye, and Mila's over in a wheelchair. You're looking at her floofy tail. That's her beach umbrella that she carries with her. So while we're waiting for everybody to come in, yes, Journey. We got Wyatt on. Oh, you can see Wyatt. Okay,
yeah,
good.
Wyatt's on camera.
Okay. Did everybody survive the windstorm? We had, at least in the Great Lakes region, we had a lot of wind come through last night. Power outages most of the night for a lot of our little town. A lot of trees down, a few roof damage. Luckily, personally, we didn't experience anything except for a couple shingles off the roof. Guys, settle, guys. So say hello, let us know where you're watching from, what state, and let us know how you survived the storms if you had them in your area. And by the way, when I ask these questions, there is about a 10-minute lag between what I'm doing here and what you're seeing on the screen. So if you ask a question, it's going to be 10 or 15 seconds before we get to answer it. Do we have anybody watching from Ohio today? Because I want to touch on Avery's law. It affects dog owners and anybody that handles dogs in Ohio. So, if there's nobody from Ohio, we can go a little less on the law. But if there's people here from Ohio, we really need to talk about some of the changes. Otherwise, we could just talk about how Rescued Rollers has to change our processes going forward after next week. A lot of changes to the dog laws in Ohio, and there's more coming up. We'll talk briefly about that. But where's everybody from today?
I'm not seeing any comments yet, so.
Okay.
Looks like we've got about 10 people watching. So, yay, everybody.
Okay, folks.
Happy Saturday.
If you can hear us, let us know where you're watching from, please. We like to know where we're reaching because that kind of covers our discussion, helps our discussion. If you have questions about any of the dogs or our processes at Rescued Rollers, this is a very casual setting. We do it once a month. We have local supporters that like to come visit our dogs, the sanctuary dogs here. And we sit out on the deck and we have coffee. And they get to ask questions and interact with the dogs. So a few months ago, we decided that once a month, second Saturday at 10 a.m., we're going to expand that so that you guys, wherever you're located, can see the dogs, ask your questions. We can update people on, what changes coming for the rescue or things like that. And your questions drive almost all of the discussion. So if you have comments or questions, please put them out there for us. So, and are we seeing any comments yet at all?
No comments. I am going to go ahead and put the link up to Avery's law.
Yeah. Okay. In case we don't have any comments showing yet, so can you double check on your phone just to make sure?
Yeah. I'm watching it on the phone and the computer.
Thank you. We're going to put 2 links up for you guys in case you're in Ohio, and we archive these. Hawkeye and Roxanne, settle down.
Karen Chi-Chi's on from
Hi,
Westchester,
Karen.
PA.
Good morning, Karen. So we're going to put 2 links up in the chat or in the comments. One of them will be to our local dog warden. In Ohio, the dog wardens are going to be responsible for enforcing this new Avery's law. There's a dog warden assigned to every county. Our local dog warden in Crawford County has done a great job in the last week or so. She has started to post sections of the new law. It's a little dry if you're not used to reading legal stuff, but the information is there. We also have a link that we're going to post in the comments to the actual text of Avery's law. It's a PDF right from the legislator's site. Okay? Now I want to caveat, if we have a discussion about Avery's law, I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice or tell you how it's going to be interpreted. What I can give you is an informed opinion. First of all, I used to be a law enforcement officer, so I understand mostly how the process works. And in the last month, I've had meetings at the state and county and local level with lawyers, the county dog warden, and guys, sorry for these guys, they're wound up today. And also our local humane society, so that we can decide on, you know, what's the best way to proceed, because this law is not only going to affect dog owners, but it's going to affect anybody that houses a dog, specifically rescues and shelters. So we've been educated on it as much as we can. Some of it's going to have to be determined with case law, but there's a lot of changes, especially for dog owners. Hope you guys are ready for some wound up dogs. At least we don't have our parrot talking yet. She will. Do we have any comments whatsoever? And there's Baby, my parrot.
Baby's right on command.
So, somebody put in a comment. Just say hello, something. Let us know the comments are working. You should be able to comment.
Karen Chi-Chi's added some comments about wind damage. They
Okay.
had some horrible wind there last night, but she hasn't seen any house damage.
Thank you. Okay. We've had a couple houses here, a couple businesses lost their roofs. We had quite a bit of wind damage, and I'm not cleaning up from it yet because we have another one coming in tomorrow night, Sunday night, into Monday. So.
There's a lot of people in Ohio without power.
Yes.
Had those comments I've seen out there on social media, and wind reports from the different around the state.
Right.
65 miles per hour at Mansfield, which is 20 minutes from us, and
Right.
then up to like 77 up at Lakefront in Cleveland.
Right. And I know I have a weather station here. This is just stupid trivia. I have a weather station here, and our winds hit close to 60 mile an hour yesterday. It was freaking out my rain gauge. It's got a little cup that measures the rain, and the pole, my weather station's 15 feet off the ground. The pole was wobbling so hard in the wind that my rain gauge reported 4 inches of rain, and we had 0 rain. Couple quick updates. Go ahead.
Good morning, Cheryl Kraft.
Good morning, Cheryl.
And Karen Chi-Chi says it's sweet just watching the dog being dog. She says people don't always understand that even special need dogs are still just dogs at heart.
Exactly. Every single one of them, Fenny here's my little sidekick, every single one of these dogs, in their mind, they are normal dogs. They want to play, they want to be loved on, they want to have fun, they beg for treats. These guys, their special needs is in their care requirements. That's it. They think they're normal. This is what they are. They're just normal dogs. That's one of the things we try and do with our education is let people know.
Good morning, Susan Wagner.
Hi, Susan. Good morning. It's odd that you're here on a Saturday morning for us, but we're glad to hear that. I'm going to move Mila a little bit so you could see her, because for those of you that don't know, Cheryl Kraft, who's in the comment section, is Mila's mom. So she loves to see Mila. Hang on, Journey. Hang on, girlfriend.
It'd be nice to see more than Mila's tail.
Right. And just for reference, you guys, we have always billed this coffee with the crew as a very casual chat. I think it was last month. Wyatt left a surprise for us on the rug, and I had to clean it up halfway through. Now, we're not going to keep Mila here real long because, as you can see, she's a wrecking ball. We call her Mila the Destroyer. She tries to go right through these dogs, and some of them, like Journey and Wyatt, can't really move out of the way. The other ones know, and they'll get out of the way. Yeah, toss a couple of them this way, please. We throw treats out when we need to break them up. So yeah, the special needs guys, they're just regular dogs. Their care requirements are a little different. That's it. Oh, Mila's digging up the kibble off the floor, so she's going to be head down for a long time. And if you watch, as long as she's on camera, watch her front paws. She uses her front paws. They're like monkey paws. She uses them like hands. She will pick up a single piece of kibble and get it into her mouth. So she's pretty interesting to watch. Quick updates. I want to thank our donors and our monthly donors. We had Xena and Hawkeye to the vet a week or two ago for their annuals. When it's in our budget, we also pick up the heartworm preventative for the year once they get cleared, because we test them for heartworm every year. Both of them came through with flying colors. Although Hawkeye, he's going on 7 years old here in a month or so. He's going to need a dental, but other than that, they're both extremely healthy. And we were able to renew Xena's eye drops. Xena's on eye drops, 2 different eye drops twice a day. She has a condition called PANIS, and basically it's an autoimmune disorder. Her immune system attacks her eyes, and if she doesn't have these drops, she will go blind. So we keep her on the drops, and they've been doing fantastic for her for about the 2 years that we've had her. And so everything's good, but we were just a couple dollars short of $1,500 for those 2. And that's only 2 of the sanctuary dogs. That doesn't count any intakes or the rest of the sanctuary dogs. So for those of you that support our work, I thank you very much. We've got a couple more coming up on vetting, but I can't tell you off the top of my head who it is. I think it's Mila and Journey and Wyatt in the next couple of months. And again, that's Baby My Parrot. As I started to say, it's very casual. You're going to hear, we've got Sarge and Xena in the other room. You'll probably hear them bark. You're going to hear our parrot baby. This is welcome to our life. That's what it is.
And if anybody can see through the banister on the stairwell, there is Hobbs peeking through.
Oh, yeah, I can see him. That's Hobbs, our kitty cat. These guys are all good with Hobbs. He hangs out. He's a dog. He's a cat dog.
Cheryl's laughing that Mila's mom doesn't miss much food either. She says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah. But speaking of vetting, we don't have any concerns about any of the sanctuary dogs. They are all what we consider extremely healthy, and there's nothing I'm concerned about with any of them. So the dogs are doing pretty good right now. We've had a busy week with surrender requests. We've mentioned in the past live streams that we're trying to build out our educational content, because I'm going to go ahead and, well, Mila's all right. There's a close-up. There you go for that beautiful girl, Cheryl. We've had a real issue finding fosters lately, and I think it's going to get worse. I'll tell you why in a few minutes. So we've been focused on our educational things behind the scene. We're working on putting together curriculum and things like that on how to care for these special needs dogs. Resources. We're going to start on our YouTube channel a rescue chat where rescues and shelters can come, and we'll talk about various topics. For instance, we're really going to dive deep into Avery's Law within the next month or so. It's probably going to be a 4 or 5 part series because there's a lot. I have to move Mila. She's running over Journey. Watch out, Journey. Sorry, guys. So part of what we were doing in terms of the educational stuff is we were trying to make some standardized, let's call it curriculum, for our fosters. So it would be online based and they can all go through it and we know exactly what they've covered. There's a small quiz at the end. Well, now that Avery's Law is coming into effect, we've got to redo a lot of that because there's going to be behavioral questions and some liability issues in this new law that we have to address. And this law goes into effect on Friday, March 20th. So it's coming up next week. There'll be a lot of paperwork on our side. Not a bad thing. But we have to redesign a lot of our paperwork and processes to comply with this law. So And I see Hobbs is walking around behind the camera, so you may get a look at Hobbs or not. So I'm glad nobody had real serious damage.
Raven's Cloak is on. She says, all the beautiful babies.
Hello, Brittany. Thank you. Brittany at Raven's Cloak. She's here in town. She's a business owner, Raven's Cloak. And she has been a huge supporter of us for many years. I'm glad to see her here. She's good people.
Diane St. James says, thank you for all that you do, with a whole string of exclamation points.
Hi, Diane. Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk, at this point, I'm not going to go too heavy into Avery's Law because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people here from Ohio. We'll save the deep dive for the YouTube podcast, and that'll be probably within the next month, okay? We've got a busy couple months coming up. Here's the thing with Avery's Law. And just very briefly, it's just paperwork, buddy. Hawkeye's on top of everything, as you can tell. And Fen just wants to be next to me. Okay, so Avery's Law was written in response to a very severe dog attack on Avery Russell. She was a child severely injured and actually disfigured from a dog attack in 2024. Okay, it comes into effect on this Friday. The March 20th is when the changes go into effect. It basically deals with vicious dogs. That's the intent of the law. However, they've done a lot of rewriting the current dog laws and dog code. So it affects everybody that deals with dogs in Ohio. Everybody from an owner to a groomer, a vet, a kennel. And the law specifically talks about rescues and shelters too. So this is something we have to pay attention to, and we have to follow the law, obviously. It expands the enforcement, both criminal and civil exposure for dog owners and keepers, including shelters and rescues. Liability for injuries caused by dogs excuse me, it's early. Need more coffee. Liability is expanded both civilly and criminally. Insurance companies are going to play a much bigger part in this, so insurance scrutiny is going to come into effect. Also lawyers, which is the part that scares me because there's a lot of liability with this, and a lot of lawyers go after the deep pockets. Now, the one amazing thing about this bill is if there's a dog attack, typical with a dog bite, your dog could be deemed dangerous by the dog warden. You have a chance to appeal it in court, but let's just say there's a dog bite and you're talking with the warden. This law talks about, is it a provoked or unprovoked attack? And that is from the dog's perspective, okay? So that's a very, very important exception to help protect the dogs. A good example is somebody tries to break in my house. These guys that can walk go ahead and attack him, right? That's provoked. The law specifically talks about defense of a person. It talks about, and let me back up. The vicious dog law or vicious dog designation applies to a dog that bites or causes serious injury to a person, but also another animal, livestock excluding chickens. I have no idea why they excluded chickens, but that's the law. So, for instance, if you go to an off-leash dog park, which we do not anymore, but if your dog gets in a dog fight and there's serious injury there, one or both of those dogs can get designated as a dangerous dog, which increases your legal penalties and obligations under this dog. They can mandate special containment. Dangerous dog designation goes up to $100 a year filing fee. They have to be labeled on their collar, a tag for a dangerous dog. Your property has to be labeled. They can mandate you have a certain type of fence or enclosure. There's all sorts of ramifications. But the good news is there's an exception or at least some discretion if the dog was provoked. And this is from the dog's perspective. If you have a little child fall on top of a dog suddenly, and the dog just reacts with a bite, from the dog's perspective, that was provoked. So you've got some leeway with this law, and I'm really glad that they talk about this provocation from the dog's perspective. Okay. So, but the problem as a rescue, what I have to deal with as a rescue, there's a couple issues. First of all, if a dog gets designated, that designation, and again, the designation as a dangerous dog, that stays with that dog for life, and it carries non-negotiable penalties, criminal and civil. It carries insurance requirements, training requirements, etc. If your dog is designated dangerous, and it doesn't even have to involve a bite, by the way, I'll tell you about that in a second, you are required to do training and have certain types of enclosures, carry a minimum of $100,000 liability insurance on this dog, etc. Okay? So the scary part about this is the dogs can be designated, and I'm reading this from the dog law, and if we have comments, Noel's going to interrupt me. The scary part about this, for a dog owner, right, I have to look at it from several different points of view. As an administrator, etc. But as a dog owner, I'm, Joe Smith, and I just have a dog. Dogs could be designated as dangerous without physical contact in some situations. So your dog does not have to bite somebody to be declared dangerous. There's two ways this can happen. Injury caused in a menacing fashion. For instance, you have your dog tied to your front porch. There's an old lady walking down the sidewalk. The dog charges towards the lady. The lady breaks her hip when she's trying to get away. She falls and breaks her hip because she's so scared of the dog. That's a serious injury. Your dog can be labeled dangerous without ever making contact with that person. Okay? So this is a real wake-up call for people and how they need to contain their dogs. And importantly, pay attention to the dog's body language so that you can interrupt some of these behaviors before they happen. The other way they could be designated dangerous without a bite or attack is repeated nuisance behavior. For instance, if your dog has been caught running at large without a leash 3 times, if it's caught running at large without a leash, you could be cited for a nuisance dog violation. I think civil $50 fine, right? After 3 of those, your dog is considered a nuisance dog. If you are cited 3 or more times for nuisance dog violation, which means your dog's off leash, whether it bothered people or not, the dog could be escalated to dangerous status. So it really, owners need to pay much more attention. It also gives the dog warden it gives them the authority to seize a dog immediately following attack. In the past, you could quarantine the dog in your own home. Like if you had a fenced yard, don't take the dog out for the 10 days or however the investigation lasts. Now the dog warden can seize it, and you are responsible as the owner for the quarantine fees and the boarding fees, $500 to $800 at the end of the day before anything gets to the court. The court has discretionary euthanasia. Even if it's committed less severe but still dangerous acts. One of the things this bill introduces is strict liability for these offenses, which means the dogs do not have to have a prior history. You may have a neighbor whose dog is always running loose and growling or harassing the neighbors. That's a prior history. Or you've been cited before. That's a prior history. This can happen, these legal consequences, both civil and criminal, can happen immediately. First incident. They don't have to have a history. It's strict liability. Now, one of the interesting changes to this is Avery's law targets the harborer and keeper of a dog as much as the owner. Anyone professionally handling a dog may now be legally responsible for the animal's behavior and the owner's compliance. What that means is, now remember, here's the ticket. Avery's Law applies to dogs that attack people as well as animals, right? If you put your dog in boarding and he somehow gets loose and bites somebody or bites another dog, first of all, you now, under this law, have to tell any caregivers, your vet, your groomer, whoever, you have to let them know the dog's been designated nuisance, dangerous, whatever. But if that kennel decides to board your dangerous dog or your nuisance dog, they now become civilly and criminally liable if that dog attacks another dog in their kennel or a person if he happens to get loose. And there are two different standards. One is negligence, one is recklessness. It's a legal discussion for another day. But the problem is, that leads to vicarious responsibility. If you were boarding as a kennel, here's an example that my class got. If you are boarding a dangerous dog and it escapes your facility, you, the business, can now face the enhanced criminal penalties established by Avery's Law. Because obviously the penalties increase with each occurrence. The first time you could say, oh, he's never done this before, I don't know. You're still liable. But once that designation is given for that first one, or you're a kennel and you accept the boarding, the liability and the penalties increase if you don't take the proper precautions according to the law. The law will also require owners to carry $100,000 in liability insurance for the specific dog. Now, insurance companies being involved bother me a little bit because insurance companies, some of them will not insure certain breeds. I want to be clear, Avery's Law is not breed specific. It applies to all dogs, regardless of breed. Obviously, larger breed dogs are going to be affected more because they can do a lot more damage than, say, a Chihuahua under the law. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay. It includes strict liability. Certain violations are now strict liability offenses. This means if the dog bites someone while in your care, you're a dog sitter, and the dog bites somebody in your care, saying, I didn't know he would do that, is no longer a valid defense to avoid citations. It also includes mandatory reporting. Veterinarians and healthcare providers are now legally required to report dog bites to the local health commissioner within 24 hours. This will likely lead to more dangerous dog designations being triggered during routine vet visits or even post-incident care. So the example that we were given is, for instance, your dogs get in a fight at home and one of them is in, and you take it to the vet. And you mention, yeah, my other dog did this. That vet is now obligated to report it. Yeah.
Karen Chichi has an observation here. She said the paperwork will be a headache
Yes.
for the good actors.
Yes.
But she says, I can see a real need for this type of law. She has been involved in 4 cases, or knows of 4 cases, where shelter dogs were placed recklessly
Yes.
and without behavior disclosure.
Correct.
Which then involved incidents. Correct.
As a matter of fact, there was just a case that I read about last week. And by the way, Karen, if you're transporting through Ohio, this is also going to apply to you while you're in Ohio. But there were a couple cases I've read about in the last few weeks. Last week, there was a $5 million jury award given to a transporter who was attacked by a German Shepherd with a bite history. The person surrendering the dog kind of let the shelter know, be careful. The shelter never relayed it to the transporter, and the transporter got attacked. And so the city, the Humane Society, and the rescue were all held liable.
And Karen shares here that that situation happened with her.
Yes.
An owner surrendered back to a breeder with no disclosure of behavior,
Right.
and it resulted in attacks on her. People need to disclose information for other people's safety.
Right. And Ohio has addressed that, Karen. Now, people are going to lie or they're not going to lie. Ohio is requiring disclosures once a dog is designated. So if I have a dangerous dog and I want to surrender it to the Humane Society, I'm required to disclose that. Or if I take it to a groomer or a kennel, I am required to disclose to them that my dog has a dangerous dog designation. Now, this needs to happen through the whole chain of command of the dog. In terms of our rescue, I can tell you what this means is we have a series of 4 questions. I hope you can hear me over, baby. I'm sorry, but yeah, this is my life. We have a series of 4 questions that the lawyers have given us in terms of when we intake a dog, when we place a dog with a foster, or when the dog is adopted. And they're behavioral questions. Has the dog ever bitten anybody or another animal? Blah, blah. Now, these are standard questions that should be asked, but now Ohio is requiring us to ask them and also provide a written behavior assessment to an owner. So in the past, any of these guys, I always update people and I tell people, issues with this dog or great, blah, blah, blah.
And Karen also made that comment that legitimate rescues already understand the far-reaching impacts and are very careful.
Right. So how ours has to change, for instance, we're going to ask these 4 specific questions based on the legal advice, in addition to our normal, intake behavioral assessment. When we place a dog, we typically, there's a meet and greet and we talk about the dog's behavior and the concerns. Going forward, we're not just going to do the oral report. We're going to give a written report that they have to sign. Not a big deal. It's a best practice. It's just a little more work, but it's okay. Yeah, there's going to be questions. Even if I bring a lot of dogs in from the Bahamas, or we've had some from, we have a partner rescue in Florida and one in West Virginia that we bring dogs in. We're going to be asking this of every single dog that comes in. If this dog is coming into Ohio, I don't care where it comes from. You're going to have to answer these questions and sign that you answered truthfully and attach a photo ID, so driver's license or state ID. I had a meeting last week with our Humane Society director and the local dog warden, so we're all on the same page about this. If I bring in a dog from the Humane Society, if they ask me to pull a dog, I have to have a written behavior report from this dog, and it has to address these 4 or 5 legal questions. So we were trying to have a meeting to figure out how we're going to standardize all that. But it's that inclusive. It applies to shelters and rescues in terms of they're going to have a written report, and we're trying to develop some forms that we can do efficiently and still cover us for the liability side of it. So again, I mentioned it removes the free bite or history requirement. This is now a strict liability. There doesn't have to be a history. And most of these are phrased as if they do the dog acts without provocation. Obviously, provocation is a mitigating factor. We are very lucky here. Our local dog warden is very much a behaviorist and has lots of training on this, and she understands when she has to do these investigative reports. The provocation is from the dog's perspective, not the owner's perspective. Owner's going to say, yeah, that old lady should have been walking across my sidewalk. That dog couldn't get to her. Well, dog warden may see it different because the dog warden's got to think about the dog. The definition of a dangerous dog has expanded. As I mentioned earlier, a dog can now be designated dangerous without a traditional bite somebody falls running away, or if you've got a nuisance dog, you've been tagged as a nuisance dog 3 times, it could be labeled a dangerous dog. So what this means for pet owners is secure containment matters now more than ever. That means, fence yard or on leash, your tie out, whatever your situation is. Licensing and compliance matter. Dog license is a misdemeanor if you don't register your dog, with increasing penalties. If your dog is designated, the current fee is, a dog license fee, don't quote me on this, is around $20 right now for a normal 1-year dog license. A dog with a designation right now is $50. The fee for the designated dogs is now going to $100, and they're going to have to wear an ID tag. You're going to have to post signs on your property. The court can require you to have a fence or a pen. In certain cases in the law, they mandate a 6-foot chain link fence or a pen with a roof. Again, past behavior has to be disclosed to service providers. Makes sense. So many people haven't done it. Now they can be tagged if they don't. So what this means for rescued rollers, this is not a bad thing. Again, I think it's gonna get rid of a lot of irresponsible owners once these court cases start being publicized, right? Makes a little more work for rescues, but the good ones, as Karen said, are already doing what they're doing, and they're cognizant of the dog's behavior. There are dogs I have here I will not take to public adoption events or to, we visit schools and hospitals with like Mila and Wyatt, and we could do that with Journey. But there are some dogs like Xena and Sarge, they're not really safe to put in that environment. So we don't take them. This is going to force shelters and rescues to do a better behavioral assessment. And if they're smart, they're going to do a behavior assessment after each event as well. So you have ongoing evaluation. If I take Wyatt out to talk to a science class, when I get home, I'm going to fill out a little assessment. He did great with the kids. He didn't growl. He didn't bite, so that we can develop a pattern. The paperwork is our best defense against civil and criminal liability. My concern, personally, is lawyers getting involved. With increased criminal penalties, that means there's increased civil penalties, and everybody can now be charged. As a matter of fact, here's something that really scares me as a rescue. If I have a dog that has attacked other dogs, not seriously enough to be designated, but shows a propensity to be aggressive to other dogs, if I adopt that out to you, Karen, today, with full disclaimer that this dog has to be an only dog, 5 years from now, if that dog, you take it to a vet or a groomer and it attacks another dog, I can still be sued for the life of the dog. So it's scary in terms of the rescue world and the shelter world. Same thing with the shelter. If we adopt out with a dog with a known behavior, we then become liable, even if it's 5 years down the road and we don't have any control over how the owner covers it. This is going to have to be worked out in case law once it goes to court, because it's kind of scary. But what that means for me is, if the shelter asks us to pull a dog and we determine after a few days that it is not safe to have this dog with other dogs, that dog is immediately going to become a sanctuary dog. It doesn't mean I'm going to euthanize it. No, it means I'm not going to adopt it out to the public. A couple of years ago, we brought in a sheriff's department in Maryland called us and says, we have an explosive detection dog that was injured on a job, can't walk. Can you take him? So the next day we drove down to Maryland and picked up Canine Philly. He was about 125 pound Belgian Malinois. Police dog, very strong willed, commands were Czechoslovakian. I knew when I said we would intake this dog that he could not be placed with the public. It is not safe to place a police dog with the general public. So dogs like that, I knew he was coming in as a sanctuary dog, right? So you may see a lot more dogs come in as a sanctuary dog, because we are equipped to handle some of these behaviors. And once we're aware of them, we don't necessarily want to put them out in the general public where their action or inaction will reflect liability on us. So, at every point in our process, from intake to foster and even to the adopter, we're going to be discussing, asking, or informing of these behavioral history questions. We're going to have to require our fosters, we're going to have to train our fosters on how to properly document the behaviors. And everything's going to require a signature and photo ID. And our initial evaluation, when we bring a new dog in, normally we know within a week or two, barring any medical issues, we know within a week or two if the dog's good for adoption. On these unknown dogs, it's going to extend that evaluation period. So we may have the dog for a month or more. You know, a lot of you have heard of the decompression rule for dogs: 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. It's a great guideline. It's not perfect, but it's accurate. So we have to give the dogs time to decompress. If you picture a dog going into a shelter, the very first day they do a behavior assessment, and the dog's nervous and scared, it's going to be a totally different behavior assessment than when he's been in a home for 6 months, right? So, you know, we want to, our best protection against liability is to develop a history, a behavior history over time. And that means, you know, minimum probably in most cases of, say, 3 weeks of evaluation for behavior with the other dogs, with cats, with people. And I would say that's probably a minimum. You know, the other interesting thing that the lawyers brought up in terms of liability, and again, as the director of Rescued Rollers, I have to be concerned with liability. If we get sued, we go out of business and we can't help any more dogs. And, you know, that's not the worst part. I don't want to have to go through that, right? The lawyers advised, right now, the Department of Agriculture requires us to keep records on these dogs for 2 years. So if I brought in a dog 2 years ago and he got adopted yesterday, I still have to keep all his paperwork for 2 more years, right? Now, the liability is in effect for the life of the dog. So you want to say an average lifespan is 15 years? Document retention just went to 15 years for these dogs. Where did they come from? Where did they go? What behavior assessments did you do? Because you had the chance to be sued at any point during that time. You know, as an administrator, it's kind of scary. But then I step back and think, oh, we've never had an incident that would be covered by this law because we try to be intelligent and smart. So it's just, it's a lot more work. I have to redesign a lot of forms, a lot of training, and I'm going to be slightly more particular on some of our intake. So there's a question.
So Karen Chichi says that there certainly needs to be some case law worked out. She thinks the new owner should assume all risks associated with the dog.
I agree.
That were disclosed at the time of adoption. Correct,
Karen. And there's 2 different standards here: criminal and civil. Criminal, if you, as a rescuer or shelter, if you've done your due diligence, most likely you're covered on the criminal. However, this is where the liability waivers on the adoption contracts and things like that come in. But it's going to be figured out in case law. That's the short version. Because if I know lawyers, they're going to come and say, well, you knew this dog had bit somebody. Why would you adopt it out?
Another comment that she added was, how can a puppy adopted out at 10 or 12 weeks cause liability to a rescue when it bites someone at 5 years old? And she's talking about, you know, like environmental things.
Yes.
And how it's treated down the road.
Agreed. And also, there is a caveat in this law, I don't have it in front of me. It's talking about age appropriate. So there's a very large difference of a 10 or 12-week-old puppy bites somebody versus a 5-year-old dog. I don't have that code right in front of me, so I can't do that. The law did try to address age appropriate and provoked versus non-provoked. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's for sure going to take a lot of time, a lot of fine-tuning, a lot of situational circumstances, and feedback from people involved in situations.
Yep.
Dog wardens, vets, owners, rescues. So many people who are affected are going to have to give feedback through the appropriate legislative channels.
Correct. And now the intent of this law is good because we all know irresponsible dog owners. So I'm not faulting it. But for instance, there's a gray area. Another thing that's going to have to be talked about in case law is the statute itself talks about shelters or rescues that have a shelter. It does not address a foster-based rescue like ours. Now, when they address rescues that have a shelter, and the Humane Society, dog warden, there's a level of negligence for the rescue that has a shelter, and recklessness for like the Humane Society. The question is, where does a foster-based rescue fall in that? So we have to assume for now, we have the lower level of just negligence, just like a standard dog owner would have, because our dogs are either here with us or they're placed in a foster home. It's not a facility. So there's a lot of things that still need to be resolved about this. Again, I think it's a great thing, and I'm very, very pleased that they are looking at provocation from the standpoint of the dog, right? Was this dog feeling like it was provoked? Was it being teased? Were the kids throwing sticks or stones at it? Whatever. I love that. And also, and I'm glad you brought it up about the age, Karen, because I totally forgot to mention, it's not concrete. They're not giving an age definition, but they did mention about age-appropriate provocation. It's a lot different when you're doing a puppy versus a dog that's injured, let's say, at 10 years old. So, yeah. I mean, they tried, but there's a lot of changes going on in most of the dog laws. As a matter of fact, right now it's working through, I don't know if it's the House or the Senate, but they're working on on revamping the dog laws around breeding. Ohio is one of the worst states for puppy mills, and they're doing all sorts of new definition changes in terms of who's a breeder, are you a high volume breeder. They're previously, I'll get to the question in 1 second. Previously, if I remember correctly, when a facility was inspected, say a breeding facility, they got a day or two notice in advance. Now there's no notice. They're going to be surprise visits, so they don't have a chance to cover up the. So there's a lot of changes to Ohio law coming for Ohio dog laws.
Tara Zoom says hi.
Hi, Tara.
And Julie Rexroad,
Julie.
she's got a pretty good question here. And she says, what do you suggest for behavior training for a dog that's reactive? And we've spoken before about one of her dogs, Riley.
Yes.
He's a wonderful dog, but is so aggressive towards anyone outside of our family. We have to put him in his room when someone comes over.
Matter of fact, to interrupt, you have to put him in a room when someone comes over. That is a requirement of the new law. If your dog has been designated, you will be required to safeguard your visitors by sheltering your dog away from them.
She says he will be with us for the rest of his life, but she's been concerned if someone has to come into her house in an emergency. What suggestions do you have for that?
Julie, I understand that completely because as a rescue, we deal with some of those same situations. That is a huge question that you and I could talk about offline. I don't have enough time or resources in front of me to talk to you about it here. However, I will tell you this. The court, here's an interesting thing. Excuse me. The court, when your dog gets designated as dangerous, and again, that could happen without even a bite, they can mandate $100,000 insurance and behavioral training. Okay? Here's the ticket I want you to think about, though. In Ohio, do you know the licensing requirements for a dog trainer? A sales tax license. That's it. Anybody can call themselves a dog trainer and get a sales tax license and say, I do dog training. Very similar for behaviorists. So due diligence is very important. You, as an owner, need to really dig into the qualifications and the history of this trainer. Anybody can call themselves, Joe Smith Dog Training. All they do is file for a sales tax license, a vendor's license. They have no legal requirements to have any training whatsoever. So that's interesting in itself.
So we've got about 10 minutes left. It's been a pretty heavy conversation. Let's lighten up a little bit and see if there's any questions from the viewers about any of the dogs who are on screen.
Here's good. Hawkeye, you got to move, buddy.
Hawk, come over here.
I'm trying to get you guys to get a good look at Roxy. And she is very, very difficult. This is Roxy in front of me, this little black one. She's very, very difficult to get a good picture of.
Oh,
and she's a tripod. She's only got one back leg, as you can see. She came up from the Bahamas about 4 or 5 years ago. And she's a daddy dog. Now, speaking of the Bahamas, I bent our rules a little bit this week. I found out that one of the dogs we have intaked 5 years ago from the Bahamas, his name is Corey. He's a pot cake. The owner surrendered him to the shelter. Now, luckily, I have a very good working relationship with the shelter, and they called me before he even arrived. And they understand he's one of mine, so they need to take special care of him. And I love my birds. I do. And she's actually very beautiful. One day I'll maybe put a picture up. She's bright yellow. Anyway, Corey is a pot cake. He is with the Crawford County Humane Society. He was surrendered along with 2 other dogs due to life changes. Rescued Rollers is sponsoring his adoption fee. We do not have any fosters available. 0. So Corey ended up at the shelter. We are sponsoring his adoption fee. We're going to post you're going to see it shared on the Rescued Rollers page. Corey is a great dog. He's 5 or 6 years old. Very sweet. Great medium size. I'd say maybe 35 pounds. I've been spending time with him every week. I've got some pictures when I went out to visit him at the Humane Society. But we need to get Corey a home. He's had a lot of people let him down in his 5 years in the States, and it's heartbreaking. If I did not have such a crowded situation here, be here, sanctuary, would never be let down again. We're working to get, and we are going to sponsor his adoption fee because he's one of ours. Now, those of you, probably you, Karen, and anybody in the Great Lakes region, we've got another storm coming through tomorrow night with high winds, Sunday night into Monday. They're actually going to be worse winds than what they were yesterday. They're going to be up over 65 miles an hour. So buckle up, buttercups.
Julie Rexroad says she remembers Corey.
Yeah, I'm heartbroken about Corey, and I
just shared his link.
Thank you. I'm heartbroken about Corey, or heartbroken for Corey, but I'm very, let's just say, disappointed with the situation. And we'll leave it at that, because I have to play nice. Corey's a great dog. Corey's a really good dog. And if my friend Linda is watching, I got a yesterday. I want to offer my condolences. 5 years ago, we adopted out a deaf dog to our friend Linda. And he was a handful, and she did wonderful for him. She lost him yesterday to cancer, and he was only 5 or 6 years old, and she's crushed. And Linda, if you're watching, we're very sorry for your loss. You did an amazing thing for Giuseppe. You did good. Good girl, Fanny. Okay, before we wrap it up, we'll give you 5 or 10 seconds if anybody has any more questions. My voice is about to run out on me. Now, just as a heads up, ask your questions now if you have them. Right now, we don't have any firm decisions. Really, it's just the process of our adoptions and fostering that is going to change, and we need to take some time to develop the proper paperwork, make some training videos, etc., before we actively get into intakes again. Right now, for the very short term, we're going to be limited to what I'm going to call emergency intakes. Dogs like Cooper, if you remember Cooper, he needed help like yesterday. So intakes are not necessarily on hold, but they're going to slow down while we get regrouped and prepare for the changes that are coming next week, because our processes need to change. And dog in and get this paperwork done, for instance. Anything going on with questions or comments?
Julie Rexroad, thank you guys for everything that you do, and she's really impressed that we sponsored Corey's adoption.
Thank you.
And Karen Chichi is expressing condolences to Giuseppe's person,
Karen.
Linda.
Julie Rexroad,
Yeah.
if you're still on, give me a call, and I may have to mute you guys because FedEx just showed up, and these guys usually recognize the truck. If he comes to our door, I'm going to have to mute the audio for a second. Thank God I just figured out how to do that this morning. But Julie, get a hold of me this week or next if you want to talk about Riley. I understand it. I'm in the same situation as you with a couple of mine, so I get it. We'll talk about it. Your best defense is playing offense and maintaining Riley's conditions properly. But we'll talk about it. Get a hold of me whenever you have time. I know you're busy. Okay, any new questions? Okay, folks. Seems like it's been a long one, and I thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. As we move forward, you're not going to see a whole lot on Facebook about our new policies around this law, but I am going to do a series of like 15-minute video podcasts on various sections of this law, and it will be out on our YouTube channel as I have the time to create it. That's where the rescues or the shelters are going to want to go watch, because it's going to talk about technical stuff. And there will be a section that deals with dog owners too. So if Julie or anybody else wants to go see what changes for the owner, you'll be able to watch just that short little podcast. For now, any questions about these laws, if you're a rescuer or a shelter or an owner, they should be directed, first of all, to your county dog warden, whatever county you're in. This is a state level law, so all the counties are the same, but the dog wardens are tasked with enforcing it. So you want to be on the same page as your dog warden. Or if you're a rescuer or shelter, you're going to want to run it across past your lawyer or your insurance company to see how it's going to affect you. Insurance companies have some pretty intense requirements sometimes for rescue, and that's going to play into this as well. I mean, it is what it is. This is what the law is. We've got to pivot to handle what we need to do. But check with your dog warden first if you have any questions.
Cheryl Kraft says, thank you. Karen Chichi says, thank you for doing these coffee breaks. Tara Zoom says she knows that's us. You know, a lot of things are going to be changing in her world too.
Absolutely.
So thanks everybody for joining us. Next month, second Saturday in April, we hope to be outside on the deck.
Yes, hopefully soon. It's hard to say, this is Ohio, but I'm really looking forward to being back on the deck for these. It's a lot easier for us than trying to set it up in our living room, which is a lot, but welcome to Ohio.
And it's so great to be able to talk to people live.
Yeah, I love
get
these.
their questions and that. I enjoy doing this.
I really appreciate that you guys show up for these and that we get the chance to interact, because life gets pretty busy, and sometimes, I've had to say no to 5 or 6 intake requests this week, and I got one this morning, and it's hard, and it's really nice to be able to sit down and have a cup of coffee and show off our dogs with you guys. You guys are our people. I mean, we're dog people like you, and your friends. So I appreciate you taking the time, in spite of baby, to join us. And with that, we will see you next month. Our broadcast next month is Saturday, April 11th. April 1-1. Thank you, everybody. Be safe with the weather coming through, and hopefully when we talk again, we have about 20 or 30 degrees of warmness coming in. Everybody chilled out. It's great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.